Very good evening to all the respected listeners. Today, my topic is coronary circulation, and first we'll deal with the physiology of the coronary arteries, and then finally we'll reach towards something that is known as the coronary artery calcium scoring. So it's a recent advancement. And first, let's start with coronary circulation. So this is competency 5.10. Describe and discuss the regional circulation. That is, the coronary circulation is one of the type of regional circulation. So what are the specific learning objectives? The functional anatomy of the coronary circulation, then the methods which are used to measure the coronary blood flow, peculiarities of the coronary circulation, factors which are affecting the coronary blood flow, describing the regulation of the coronary blood flow. So what is coronary? Coronary circulation mean the arteries which are supplying the musculature of the heart, right? So the blood flow to the myocardium by the coronary artery is known as the coronary circulation. So there are two main coronary arteries which are originating from where? They are originating from the root of aorta. So two main coronary arteries originating from root of aorta, that is the right and left coronary arteries. So one thing is clear, that the musculature of the heart or the myocardium is getting its blood supply through the coronary arteries, right and left, which are originating from the root of aorta. So you have right and left coronary artery. So the left coronary artery is further subdividing into two main branches: left anterior descending artery and left circumflex artery. So we know that left anterior descending artery is also known as the Widow's artery. It is most commonly involved. The blockages most commonly take place in the left anterior descending artery, and we also have a left circumflex artery. So here you can see in this diagram, this is aorta, this is the root of aorta. From the root of aorta, we are getting the left coronary artery and the right coronary artery. The left coronary artery again dividing into two main branches, the left circumflex and the left anterior descending, which is also known by the name of Widow's artery, as it is most commonly involved in heart blockages. Now, the left coronary artery is again two types. Similarly, the right coronary artery, which is originating from the right part of the root of the aorta, it is branching into right marginal artery and posterior descending artery. Okay, so these two arteries, the main one, this one which is posterior one, this shown by the dashed lines, is the posterior descending artery, and this what you see is the right marginal artery, one of the branches of the right coronary artery. So what are the different sections, or which are the different parts of the heart which are supplied by these arteries? First, we'll see the left circumflex artery. Okay, it is supplying the left ventricular wall, the left border of the heart. Okay, now the left anterior descending artery is actually supplying the interventricular septum, obviously because it is over here. And interventricular means the right and left ventricle, the septum which is dividing the right and left ventricle, and the anterior wall of the left ventricle. Lateral wall is supplied by the left circumflex artery. The anterior wall of the left ventricle is supplied by the left anterior descending artery. Now, similarly, posterior descending artery branch of the right coronary artery supplying the posterior and inferior walls of the left ventricle. And of course, the right marginal artery is supplying the right ventricle itself. So, we have seen that any blockage in these particular type of coronary arteries, which are providing the blood supply, the nutrition and the oxygen and whatever waste products they need to carry away from these parts, they are supplied by different arteries. So different artery blockage will result in different types of myocardial infarction, like the anterior wall MI or the lateral wall MI, like this. MI is myocardial infarction. Now let's see, we have studied about the functional anatomy. Let's come to the coronary blood flow. Coronary blood flow is what? The blood which is flowing through the coronary artery. The blood which is flowing through the coronary artery is around 4 to 5% of the cardiac output. So we know what is the normal value of cardiac output is, it 5 liter per minute. So this 4 to 5% is amounting to 225 ml per minute. This is the amount of the blood which is flowing through the coronary artery in 1 minute. And it is the only source of blood supply to the myocardium, right? The coronary arteries are the only source of blood supply, and they are the blood which is flowing is around 4 to 5%. So it is very important to study the myocardial perfusion. As you know, heart is a vital organ, right? So myocardium is exclusively supplied by the coronary blood flow. So coronary blood flow is very important to study, and coronary blood flow can be measured by many methods. So how you can estimate or how you can measure the amount of the blood flowing through the coronary arteries? We have certain method, that is the Cattey's method, the radionucleotide study, and of course the coronary angiography. So let's come to the Cattey's method. Cattey's method is based on Fick's principle. Fick's principle is what you have to inject a amount of substance in the blood, and then you have to see the arteriovenous difference of that particular substance which have been injected. So like this, in this principle, the indicator used is nitrous oxide. So it is based on Fick's principle, the Cattey's method, and the indicator which is used is nitrous oxide. What happens, this indicator, the patient is asked to inhale this N2O, and total body consumption of the gas is noted, right? The patient is inhaling the nitrous oxide, and then the total body consumption. Then the arteriovenous difference means the level of the nitrous oxide in the arteries and the level of nitrous oxide in the vein is measured by taking sample from the root of the aorta for the arterial sample and coronary sinus for the venous sample. So it indicates the consumption of the total gas by the heart, right? So the supply is by the root of aorta, because the coronary arteries are originating from the root of the aorta, and then coronary sinus is the venous drainage of the heart. So whatever amount of nitrous oxide has been consumed by the heart, we can see that by the arteriovenous differences. Now coronary blood flow is measured by this formula. Coronary blood flow will be what? It will be equal to QN2O, means the amount of nitrous oxide which has been given to inhale, and then the arteriovenous difference of nitrous oxide. So this you are dividing it, and then you can calculate the coronary blood flow. Then you have the radionucleotide study. Radionucleotide means what? It is to study the regional blood flow in heart using this radioactively active substances like thallium, right? The areas of ischemia shows a low 201 thallium uptake, thallium scan, technetium 99M. It is selectively taken up by the infarcted area, hence the hot spots indicate the reduced blood supply. Now, xenon 133 combined with angiography is used to outline the distribution of blood in the myocardium. So, these radioactive substances, they will always help in estimating their the amount of the contrast or amount of radioactive radionucleotides which are injecting into the blood. They will show some contrast, and that's how you can measure, estimate the amount of the blood flowing through the coronary artery. Then most commonly used technique is what? Coronary angiography. So what it is done is the catheter is inserted into the coronary arteries through the femoral or the radial artery, through which the contrast medium is injected into the coronary circulation. The angiogram is then obtained, which is used to study the flow of the blood, and any blockage in the coronary artery can be identified. Now, blood flow in the coronaries. The blood flow in the coronary artery is phasic. Very important word, phasic. And it depends upon the pressure gradient which is created between the aorta and the ventricular pressure during the ventricular systole and diastole. Very important. Now, it is also affected by the intramural pressure built in the muscles during systole. So it is a phasic blood flow, means during systole the blood will vary, the amount of blood flow will vary, and during diastole the amount of blood flow will vary, right? So during ventricular systole and diastole the amount of blood flowing through the coronary artery varies, and this is also affected by the intramural pressure, the pressure which is built up in the muscles of the heart, in the myocardium of the heart, and in the systole. So you see that visualization of blood vessels which are arranged in myocardium. We have these, this is a cardiac muscle, and above the surface we have the epicardial coronary arteries, and below the endocardium we have the subendocardium arterial plexus. So this is a peculiar arrangement. Blood supply of cardiac muscle is how? In the thickness of cardiac muscle, the coronary arteries are arranged in specific pattern, that is having epicardial arteries and subendocardial plexus which are connected through the small intramuscular arteries. Okay, so you have epicardial coronary arteries, subendocardial arterial plexus which are connected by the intramuscular arteries. So whenever the pressure in the muscle, intramuscular pressure, increases during systole, what will happen? That they get compressed, compromising the blood flow. So whenever the intramural pressure will rise, these will, the subendocardial plexus will get compressed, and it will compromise the blood flow to the subendocardial area of the cardiac muscle. So therefore we come to an important conclusion that Why the subendocardial infarcts are common? Means endocardium is what? Endocardium is the innermost layer of the heart. So this endocardium, below the level of endocardium, if certain blockage takes place, we call it as subendocardial infarct. That is the area because of reduction in the blood supply undergoes a tissue necrosis. So subendothelial muscles have higher oxygen consumption. I'm very sorry. Subendocardial muscle has a very higher oxygen consumption, and blood in the intramuscular arteries along with the subendocardial plexus gets squeezed, okay, during systole, reducing the blood supply to the subendocardial regions of the myocardium. So as you can see that the subendocardial region blood supply is compromised during systole. During the coronary artery occlusion, the reduced blood supply is very sufficient to salvage the muscle, and hence it results in subendocardial ischemia and infarcts. Now, this I have explained about the phasic blood flow. I'll come to the peculiarities of coronary circulation. So, what are the peculiarities? The blood flow in the coronary artery is phasic rather than continuous. It reduces in systole while it increases in diastole because of variation in the intramural pressure. Now, blood flow in the coronary artery is maximum during diastole and minimum during systole, especially in the left coronary artery. Of course, the left ventricular musculature is more strong and more extensive. Now, the reason for the phasic blood flow, I told you the high pressure develops in the myocardium during systole, which squeezes and obliterates the subendocardial and the epicardial branches of coronary artery, and hence they raises the pressure inside the coronaries too. The blood fills up in the arch of aorta during ventricular systole. Aorta, being a wind castle vessel, accommodates a large quantity of blood during systole. So at the beginning of diastole, the pressure inside the myocardium and coronaries drops and the blood is accumulated on the aorta and it flows into the coronaries. So, depending upon the pressure gradient between the aorta and ventricles, the filling of left coronary and artery determines the filling of coronaries during systole and diastole. So, if you can see in systole, the aortic pressure is 120, as we know. The left ventricular pressure is 121. RVP is the right ventricular pressure is 25. So, you see the pressure gradient in left coronary artery is -1. The pressure gradient in the right coronary artery is 95. In diastole 80, of course, the diastolic BP, that is the aortic pressure. Left ventricular pressure is 0 and during diastole, right ventricular pressure is 0. So pressure gradient is 80 and 80 in both the arteries. So what you get is, this is how the variation is there, and this is how constantly this variation is actually responsible for the phasic type of blood flow in the coronary arteries. Now, what are the various factors which are affecting the coronary circulation? The mean aortic pressure, the increased mean aortic pressure directly increases the pressure gradient, okay, and between aorta and ventricle increases the filling of coronaries and hence increases the coronary blood flow. So whatever be the mean aortic pressure, directly it increases the pressure gradient. Now cardiac output increase in cardiac output increases the mean aortic pressure, hence it is going to increase the coronary blood flow. Now metabolic factor, accumulation of metabolic waste products will increase the coronary blood flow by increasing the metabolic demand of myocardium. Now, the myocardial oxygen demand, that is we also called as MVO2, right? The volume of oxygen demand in the myocardium, it is an important determinant of coronary blood flow, right? Now, effect of ions which increases the heart rate and the contractility will result in accumulation of metabolites, hence these ions will increase the coronary blood flow. So with positive ionotropic and chronotropic effect, these such ions will cause increase in blood flow. Adenine nucleotides, it is a metabolic waste product, right? Hence it increases the myocardial blood flow. Autonomic nerve sympathetic stimulation affects the myocardial perfusion. Usually, the sympathetic vasoconstriction tone results in vasoconstriction, but the coronaries show vasodilation on sympathetic stimulation and increased blood flow. Now, it has been proposed that it occurs due to the indirect effect of sympathetic stimulation and increasing the heart rate, contractility, and increasing the myocardial oxygen demand. Another factor is heart rate. Increased heart rate increases the myocardial oxygen demand and it increases the myocardial blood flow. Now, hormones. Hormones are very important. Hormones which are producing the thyroid hormone catecholamines, they result in increased myocardial oxygen demand because they are increasing the metabolism through the cardiostimulatory effect. So they are increasing the myocardial blood flow. Now, temperature. It is the property of the cardiac muscle that the heart rate increases by 10 beats with each degree rise in temperature. Hence, high temperature increase in myocardial blood flow. Of course, because of the increase in the metabolic activity of the pacemaker of the heart. Now, another important is anemia. A decreased delivery of oxygen to the tissues. Anemia now is a reduced oxygen carrying capacity of the blood. As a result, there is decreased delivery of oxygen to the tissue, and it results in increased heart rate and contractility for which the heart has to work more. So it results in increased myocardial oxygen demand and increases the myocardial blood flow. Now, how actually the coronary blood flow is regulated, that we'll see. So by three means, by the process of auto-regulation, coronary blood flow adjusts to meet the heart's oxygen demand by dilating or constricting the coronary arterioles in response to change in the perfusion pressure. So whatever be the changes in the pressure gradient, whatever be the changes in perfusion, according to this, automatically there is adjustment how much you have to dilate the coronary artery, how much you have to constrict the coronary artery in order to regulate the blood flow. Metabolic regulation, as I told you, metabolic byproducts like adenosine and potassium, and they promote the coronary vasodilation. So they ensure adequate blood flow during increased myocardial metabolism. And neural regulation, again, sympathetic stimulation enhances the coronary vasodilation by adrenergic receptors, while parasympathetics has a minor influence through indirect mechanism. So to this part, we have done the normal physiology of the coronary circulation. Now I am going to introduce the concept of a recent advancement, that is a coronary artery scale, a coronary artery calcium score. I'll be also adding a video after this, which will actually introduce you with this technology, coronary artery calcium scoring. So it is called the calcium scoring of the coronary arteries. Okay, it is a non-invasive test that measures the amount of calcified plaque in the coronary arteries using a non-contrast CT scan. You understand? You have to measure the amount of calcified plaque. Plaque is what it is. Plaque is the blockage which is actually going to block the entire coronary artery, and it is going to produce the myocardial infarction. So what is the amount of that calcified plaque in that particular coronary artery? That is being measured with the help of a non-invasive test, and it is a non-contrast CT scan. You don't have to inject a dye in the patient also. So this is a coronary calcium scoring, and you can see somehow this is a diagram which is depicting that how at the section of this heart you can see if there is presence of certain calcification in the coronary artery. You can do the scoring. Purpose is what? The most important purpose is it is a detective thing, detects early coronary atherosclerosis before the symptoms appear, right? So estimates the risk of future heart attack and other cardiovascular events, right? And it helps guide the decision about preventive treatment also, such as statins. Usually what happens, we are giving the lipid lowering drugs in case of your lipid profile is deranged, and in angiography you find a blockage. So in that case we usually have this, but this is a non-invasive test. This is not having using any contrast. This is a calcium scoring test. So this can help to guide whether there is presence or absence, whether there is a need to worry, or if there are chances of a subsequent attack, and how you're going to guide the treatment, how you're going to use the lipid lowering drugs for preventing that. Now there is a score interpretation, that's Augustin score interpretation, that's the coronary artery calcium score, and what it means. If it is zero, of course, no detectable calcium, there is very low risk of coronary event over the next several years. Okay, if it is between 1 to 10, of course, minimal plaque, right? There is a minimal plaque, low risk. If it is 11 to 100, mild plaque burden, mild coronary artery disease. Okay, so 101 to 400, now comes the moderate plaque burden, moderate to high risk. And if it is more than 400, there is extensive plaque burden, high risk of significant CAD and coronary artery disease and the future cardiac events. So this means that the CAC scoring can very nicely stratify whether there is some risk of CAD or not. Now, indication, the test is most useful for the people who have an intermediate risk of cardiovascular disease. What can be those people? They have a strong family history of premature heart disease, or they have risk factors such as diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, or smoking, or when the treatment decisions are uncertain. What is the advantage? It's a very quick procedure, 5 to 10 minutes. No contrast injection is required, low radiation dose. It can detect the disease even before the symptoms develop, because you are actually assessing the amount of calcified plaque in the coronary artery. Even if it is subclinical, it is not producing any clinical symptoms. At that particular point of time also you can estimate it, the score. Now the limitation, it is detecting the calcified plaque only, it does not identify the soft non-calcified plaque. Okay, it is only detecting the calcified plaque. A high score does not necessarily mean that there is a severe blockage. A score of 0 does not completely exclude CAD, especially in the younger individuals or those with non-calcified plaques. In a nutshell, CAC score is a powerful tool for the cardiovascular risk stratification, particularly in people without symptoms, and help to determine how aggressively to manage the cardiovascular risk factors. So this was today's video. I'm also attaching with this video certain bites from medical professionals regarding the CAC scoring. This is something good, and I think it is patient friendly too. So please go through it, and it's a good piece of information, and it actually, this is how the coronary artery physiology is connected with a diagnostic cardiology. So thanks so much for listening to. Thank you.
हेलो फ्रेंड्स, आज हम बात करेंगे सीटी कैल्शियम स्कोरिंग क्या होता है। बेसिकली सीटी कैल्शियम स्कोरिंग स्क्रीनिंग टूल है जिसको हम सिर्फ इसीलिए यूज़ करते हैं कि नलियों में कितना कैल्शियम है ये देखने को। अगर कोई पेशेंट बहुत यंग है और हमें खाली रूल आउट करना है कि उसको कोई ब्लॉकेज है या नहीं, तो वहाँ पे जैसे ईसीजी को ट्रेडमिल हम स्क्रीनिंग के लिए करते हैं, ये उसका एक एडवांस वर्जन है जहाँ पेशेंट को कोई इन्वेजिव टेस्ट नहीं किया जाता, कोई कॉन्ट्रास्ट इंजेक्ट नहीं किया जाता, कोई सिग्निफिकेंट रिस्क नहीं है, बस नलियों में कितना कैल्शियम है ये बता देता है। पर जितना कैल्शियम है हमेशा ये डिसाइड नहीं करता कि व्यक्ति को हार्ट अटैक आएगा कि नहीं। कई बार बिना कैल्शियम वाले पेशेंट्स को भी हार्ट अटैक आ जाता है, और कई बार बहुत ज़्यादा कैल्शियम नली में हो तो भी वैसे व्यक्ति को कोई ब्लॉकेज ना निकले और कोई हार्ट अटैक ना आए, ऐसा भी हो सकता है। तो अगर किसी व्यक्ति को सिग्निफिकेंट कैल्सिफिकेशन है, यानी 400 से ज़्यादा अगर स्कोर है, तो वैसे पेशेंट को फर्दर एंजियो करके उसे रिकन्फर्म करने की ज़रूरत है। अगर किसी व्यक्ति का स्कोर बहुत लो है, ऑलमोस्ट 0 के आसपास है, तो वैसे व्यक्ति को मान के चल सकते हैं कि अगले कुछ साल तक हार्ट अटैक आने का चांस काफ़ी कम है और वो कंपैरेटिवली रिस्क फ्री माना जा सकता है।
Did you know there's an easy way to evaluate your risk for coronary artery disease? Coronary artery calcium scores are CT scans of the heart without contrast using low-dose radiation to detect calcium in your coronary arteries. Now, calcium does not belong in your coronary arteries. It only develops there if there's underlying cholesterol plaque, which is coronary artery disease. And by detecting it early in the disease course, we can then implement strategies such as lifestyle changes or cholesterol-lowering medications to help halt the progression of disease. Now, the scan is not covered by insurance, but under a new promotion, Rush is offering this calcium score at a lower cost without a physician's order. So, if you've ever wondered of your risk of coronary artery disease, this is a great way and a great time to get that information.